That way I make sure I got it both. Okay.
And just to say, Zoom changed one of the rules. Be aware of that. You used to be able to save transcript. You can save transcript now. However, you have to start the transcript on your own. And if you don't, there's nothing there. It's not just something that goes back anymore like it used to. So you have to actually go to transcript, which then starts it. And then you can save it at the end. Otherwise, you
Oh,
can't
wow.
do that anymore. I got
So,
caught by that.
okay.
Do
All
we do
right.
transcripts of CCS meetings?
I
And
Of
usually do.
this meeting,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
this meeting. But it used to be automatic, and in the latest they changed something, so you have to actually turn it on manually,
I was
and
asking,
then there's the save
the
thing.
process of uploading a video like our meetings to YouTube channel, automatic processing does a transcript.
okay,
Okay.
good,
All
good
right.
to know.
But just for us user dweebs, you now have to start transcript to then
Yeah.
save transcript.
I used to, one of the things you're talking about cataracts, I used to use the Cementeria drops that were available until the FDA said you can't sell them anymore. But when I first started using them, I had had gone to the optician and he said, "Oh, you have cataracts starting. You'll know when it's time to have them replaced. You have your lenses done and whatever, and have the cataracts removed." And I started using these drops, and more recently I've gone back and they look in my eyes and said, you don't have cataracts. You're fine. So my wife has had hers already done, both eyes. I haven't had anything done. So interesting.
Well, cataracts or no cataracts is really a threshold matter.
Yeah.
Because almost everybody by our age has some hardening in the
Oh
lenses.
yeah. Yeah.
Whether you call it a cataract or not, that's what it will be one day. And
Yes.
those of us with astigmatisms tend to have them more. Anyway, getting back to computer things, can we? I think Tim had something he wanted to tell us that was news.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just
Wait
got
for wait for the next person to come in.
I'm waiting to
Okay.
see
they
where
are
my, okay, they're in.
uh,
Okay, good.
Okay.
I just got today the notification that the July update, which is historically massive, over 500 patches to Windows 11, and 122 are actively being exploited. Three of them were 0 day, and two of them were being exploited. They also discovered some models of Dell computers cannot take the current update. It borks a bunch of drivers and other issues with it. And what they're going to have to do is they turned off those machines specifically to not get the update, and B, they are waiting for Dell to create some kind of a patch that eliminates that incompatibility. But right at the moment, those are the only machines that we know of that are really having a problem. So the majority are able to take the updates without an issue.
Okay, Sid.
And yeah.
I have one of those Dells. And it
Mhm.
is
Lucky
and
you!
it has not been fun. All of a sudden it will try to charge and pop up and say, you're not charging anymore. And the battery then just starts dropping.
Ooh.
There's a
And
lot of issues. A lot of issues. Some of it is drivers. but others are regular, shall we say, hiccups that occur with a lot of patches that might be coming in. And with the historical high over 500 patches, there was bound to be some issues. So I may, starting tomorrow and maybe Saturday, start hearing more issues with the July update. So if you haven't done it, don't do it for the time being. Put it off for at least a week.
Well, I put it on this machine as a Lenovo and haven't noticed anything yet. It had snuck in when I wasn't looking and it said, oh, you must reboot to put in your thing. So I rebooted and I anticipated rolling back something, but it only showed 2 different updates that applied.
Well, there's another issue also. I only have 2 machines with 25H2, okay? However, I got several with 24H2. I was not wanting to update until more stability existed in 25H2. But with the July, they are trying to force every 24H2 to 25H2. And I put a halt on 2 machines they're trying to do that on.
May I offer a suggestion? A tiny little utility from Gibson Research called In Control, in capital C Control, all run together. It provides a single interface and a single button, and you type in which version you want to stay on, and it does all the rest of the work, home or pro.
Yep. And it modifies the registry necessary so that it will stop the updates. Yes, Sid.
I have a machine that's stuck on 23H2. It won't even offer an update
That's
past
right.
that.
There are anybody who could not update to 24H2. Usually it's because it's an old machine that is missing a microcode in the CPU. The end result is tough.
It's not always the case. I had my other machine is a mini PC, and it came through with a 21 release of Windows 11.
Wow.
And it did not update at all until I manually forced the update to 24. Once I put the update for 24 by basically replacing what was there and forcing it up, then it went fine.
Well, they're supposedly starting with 24H2 on. They're looking for a specific microcode in the instruction set that goes back to the 1960s that the government instituted, and then it just stopped being used for anything, but it's still there in the instruction codes. And
I might believe the 1980s because there was no microcode in the 60s.
They had historical documents that go back to the late 1960s. I think.
Like I said, I don't know which machines would have even had microcode back then because I started using microcode on HP mini computers back in 1973. That was probably the earliest that I ever saw anything to do with microcode other than the 360 microcode.
This instruction wasn't microcode at the time. It was regular code, but they changed it with the microcomputers, and it is on the microcomputer chips. And the end result is they're looking for it, not to use it, but if it's not there, they don't support it. And it got reactivated in the microcode. I think it was around 2008 or 2009 that they reinstituted this code as a micro instruction in the instruction set. And yet supposedly it's not really being used until now with the 24H2 on, looking to see if you got a unsupported now CPU. You pass all the other tests, but if you don't have the microcode, they may not allow the installation. I do.
The only one that I know of that is required is a POP-CNT, population count instruction set, which
That's
didn't
the one.
occur on Core 2 Duo, but was on almost everything since.
Right, that's correct. It's pop count. That was originally a code created in the late 60s. Eventually, it became a micro instruction in the CPU chips, and they're looking for it starting with 24H2. It's a pain in the butt. I don't think it's being used by anybody for anything other than that one purpose.
My brother had found something that was in the 286 instruction set many years ago when he was under contract working on OS2 with IBM, and was looking for documentation from Intel for the load all, save all instructions, which were undocumented.
Ooh,
Yes. Back then, nobody knew about them other than the fact that OS2 was using them to change context. But it was a way to break into the kernel space easily. Okay, we had a couple other questions. The other one was control panel being misplaced or whatever. Well, on my July 7th update, I still have a control panel. I can go into settings and type control panel, and I still have a control panel. Don't know how functional it is, but it does come up.
it's also a case where a lot of what Microsoft does is a rolling release. So maybe some are now missing the control panel while the majority are not. And then next month's update might change more people's machines. They have been trying to get rid of control panel for years.
Well, when they start getting rid of it, then I might switch to Linux. Then I'll
Well,
have my own control panel problems.
let me say this about it. The
Yeah.
control panel interface will disappear.
Right.
But what the control
It'll still
panel
be there.
does, some of that stuff some businesses still need to be able to do. And
Yeah.
therefore, in the Pro Edition, you may be able to get it to happen in PowerShell or Terminal.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know there's some things that I've had to use that have been very nicely hidden in Windows 11 Pro, but if you go into the right spot to modify network interfaces and messing with IPv6, that is a couple of the places that you actually need to get down and kick the tires and change the properties.
Well,
Yeah.
also too, you have in the control panel, they've been moving much of it into the regular settings panel. And you gotta go find the darn things because they don't stand out and they're scattered all over the place. Some of them still bring up the original control panel image of whatever tool you're bringing up instead of a new look.
I know that if you set a manual IPv4 address with the standard Windows 11 interface, it requires you to also populate a DNS server address as well, rather than just the subnet and the mask and the router address. They also need a DNS address, and without a DNS, it won't let you set that either.
Yeah, I've been changing DNS from the ISP default DNS for decades. So it's a mute to me as far as that goes. But it's there are some DNS services that are not designed to be secure. TLS or TSL.
TLS,
Ridiculous.
TLS 1.2
Yeah,
and
and
1.3.
there are a few. Cloudflare is one of them. They have different addresses, so there may be at least two addresses that are for IPv4 for the two different services, both secure and unsecure. But it's worse in IVP6 because I think there were more than two addresses for the IPv6 DNS secure and unsecure.
There are. I So, do we have enough on this? Want to continue?
Sure. You also wanted to talk about the boot issues that you discovered, Bob.
Tim brought up some things, and this actually grows out of the secure boot updates and the changes they are making. Some of the recent Windows updates are requiring that your Windows EFI boot partition be a bit larger than it historically has been. I checked on my computers that were upgrades from Windows 10 to Windows 11, and they were using 384, 300 or less megabytes for the EFI boot partition. Under Windows 10, this was sufficient. Under Windows 11, starting with 25H2, it may no longer be sufficient for some updates and some functions. So, what you need to do, I would like to share a screen to show the tools that you can use.
Sure.
You need to do a little repartitioning. And in this meeting, we can get technical. Do you want to do that or not, Tim?
No, go ahead. But the one thing I want to mention, if anybody upgraded to 11 from 7, 8, or 10, have 200 megabytes or smaller UEFI partitions, they cannot accept the new 2023 certification and many firmware updates that are required in the UEFI at minimum, and therefore you may fall behind on updates that keep failing. That's the key. And I think the new size, and that's what I changed mine to, are 500 megabytes, which is on most of people's drives is a drop in the bucket. It's smaller than an eyedrop out of an eyedropper. And
However, because of its position in the drive, it's a little tricky to expand.
oh no, I have no problem.
Well,
That's what I was doing. But
both of my computers did, because
yeah,
this partition is the first
yeah,
or second partition,
that's
followed
correct.
by the Microsoft reserved partition, which
Right,
is unformatted, followed by either a little space or no space before Windows.
right.
So I couldn't get 500 megabytes out of that whole space.
There are two ways of doing them.
Now there's another way, which I would like to show,
Okay, go ahead.
and that is to shrink the Windows partition, the
That's
system
correct.
partition. Let me show you a very
Now,
simple.
you have to do the shrinkage. I agree. On mine, I had over provisioning. I
Yeah.
just slid everything over. And what I do is whatever
I'll
the
demo,
size,
I'll demo that too, sliding things
whatever
over.
the size of the partition is currently, subtract that size from 500. That's how much space you have to make right after the UEF partition, and then
Correct.
expand the UEFI partition, but then you should format it and rebuild the UEFI.
You may or may not need to do that depending on which tools you're using.
And again, with the tools, you may have to, before you start any of that, disable secure boot and then re-enable when it's all done.
Yeah, definitely make sure BitLocker's not on, Secure Boot's not on, just in case.
Yeah,
And also, you will need a third-party partitioning tool such as Minitool Partition Wizard, which is a free program,
right.
at least for this purpose. But Minitool cannot do the whole job because you have to pay for an upgrade in order to resize the Windows system partition. That's not in their free version.
Just to let people know, I use G-parted. I did not have a separate flash drive. I put it on Ventoy, and I run it from Ventoy, and I get the ability to do all that stuff because C drive is protected. You cannot be running your system live with trying to change partition locations and or size. You have to do it externally.
Minitool has a workaround in the way it does it. It's
Okay.
similar to how check disk /R or I dash R
I
will
know
run.
process.
It will create a task that happens during your next reboot. And it
Right.
takes a long time, so have yourself a sandwich ready. But let me share something about the first part of the process,
Yeah.
shrinking the Windows partition. Share screen. And I'll just share my entire screen. I don't need anything special. And I will now bring up in my search. Everybody can see this pop-up?
Yep.
The start menu? Okay.
Yes.
What I am going to search for is disk management. Now, I may not be able to do this. I'm in a limited user account. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
You
do
have
not have access to
you
it.
have to launch it. Do a run box. Do a
All right.
Windows R.
Yeah. Win R, and now what's the code?
Disk
Yep.
MGMT dot
MGMT.
Yeah, disk management.
MGMT
dot
dot
MSC.
MSC.
Hold down
And
Shift key and the Control key and
Shift Control.
click OK.
Oh, there we go.
It'll ask for your administrative rights. And it works.
All right. There it is.
There it is.
Okay. Disk 1 is the one to focus on. Right
Yes.
now, I have a vastly over-provisioned Windows C system partition. And I can shrink the volume. That will not actually take effect until you reboot, but you can shrink it enough so that you can do something with it. Notice how I ended up with 600 megabytes of the EFI system partition. That was just because I had that much available. I do notice that in Windows, it does not show the Microsoft Reserved partition because that's hidden. So you shrink this and you create what looks like empty space. Now you go to your third-party tool. You will reboot, of course, and go to your third-party tool, which is, in this case, Minitool.
Also needs to be run with executive privilege.
Yes, administrator privilege. And here's Minitool. And what it shows on disk 1 is other. That's the
Yes.
Microsoft Reserved. In our case, for our purpose, initially, you would want to just simply delete it using Minitool. And that you can do without rebooting. Then you're going to find that the space created is after your Windows C NTFS partition. So you'll need to move the Windows partition. That move requires a reboot and happens during the reboot process as you come back into Windows. And it takes an eternity, so have a sandwich. Once it happens, instead of being over here, it'll move to the right. Even though Minitool during the reboot will say, and this is the free edition, it will say that it's resizing Windows. It's actually moving the C partition to the right. And that creates this extra space, which then could be resized using this tool to expand the system. That's the EFI boot partition. And don't worry about the Microsoft Reserve partition. It will recreate itself over the course of 2 or 3 reboots. And that's it. About a 4-step
Could you have
process.
used Macrium Reflect to save your entire disk off and then bring it back into a different partition structure?
No, not easily.
Okay.
And I would not recommend it.
There's another gotcha. In many cases, when you resize the FAT32 UEFI partition to be a more appropriate size, sometimes Windows will not reboot. It thinks there's a big problem. So what I have done, and I really told people several times in different groups, I use a bootable copy of the exact version of Windows to boot up off of, and I go into repair mode.
Mhm.
When I'm in the repair mode, I use the command line interface. I use an ancient tool that goes way, way back in Windows history called Dispart, which is a trick nobody wants to really know about. But anyway, you then have to find out the FAT32 partition. You select it. You then take and assign a drive letter. It cannot be X because Microsoft is using X. And it cannot be C because you got to leave C alone. So use something like Z as in zebra or something else like that. Then you do a simple command of format that UEFI partition. It makes it FAT32 again with nothing in it. Exit the tool, and then you run another tool called boot BSD, and then give it parameters of C:\Windows space slash S as in Sam space your drive letter that you assign to the UEFI partition with a colon, and then space slash F as in Frank, space, the capital letters UEFI, hit enter. Within seconds, it will rebuild the real bootloader information into that now formatted partition. And now you'll be able to reboot the computer after you turn secure boot back on.
Okay, so this does everything you need for Windows. But in this same EFI boot partition, those of us who run Linux on another drive are going to have our Linux boot information. And that may have to be reinstalled.
That's a real possibility. There you have to go through two instructions within, you have to get into Linux, then you have to give it two instructions to rebuild the grub information that'll go into that UEFI partition.
If you can get into your Linux, I could not on two machines.
There
is a reason. There is a reason.
Go ahead.
This UEFI partition has, in Linux terminology, changed its identity. It no longer has the same UUID. So grub will stall.
Okay.
Actually, the chain loading part of grub will stall on a file called fstab. And that fstab needs to be updated before anything will work there. Then you can rebuild. Then you can rebuild grub. So you're going to be using a Linux Live, and you're going to be getting into the root partition of your Linux.
Yeah.
And you are going to go into etc fstab, pick up from gparted or from disks, pick up the boot partition new UUID, and substitute it for the existing UUID for /boot EFI. It has to be the EFI boot entry. So that restored my Linux.
And the thing is, most people don't know this problem exists, and it's a hidden gotcha because if you're unaware of it, you may be experiencing problems noticing that some of the Windows updates are not going in, they're failing.
Yeah.
And this is not one of the possibilities that they bring up even in AI to be a resolution to the problem. I just realized, hey, I wonder what my UEFI partition is on one of the systems that wouldn't take one of the updates. for June. And turned out I had only 100 megabytes. Well, there ain't no way the certificate's going to shoehorn its way into 100 megabytes. So
No.
that's when I knew we had a big hidden problem that needed to be aired out for people to know about because it's a
So,
bad problem.
so in summary, the steps are this. Using any tool you want, shrink the C Windows system partition. Then move the C Windows partition to the right so that your free space is to the left of your system partition.
Yes.
Delete the Microsoft reserved or other partition using whatever tool. Then expand your EFI boot partition to what you wish. I give it 600 megabytes because on my drive, that's a good number for it. The reserved partition needs 16 megabytes, and it should be that size. No larger, no smaller, because that's what Windows expects.
All right.
And that's all there is to it. There are several reboots involved. There's one long sandwich break involved.
The bad part is 99% of Windows users wouldn't have a chance of doing this. They've got to have a techie person that knows how to use a partition manager just for the starts. And if you end up with a dual boot situation like you have with Linux, that's another issue that requires a techie person, not the average Windows user.
I was able to navigate my way to these steps using Gemini AI in Google search. And I eventually went into actual Gemini AI for a few of the details.
Yeah.
So that's how I taught myself to do this. So I taught myself on one computer that I didn't care much about. Then I did it on my main workhorse.
Right.
FS tab is something that's been around long time. In fact, in old Solaris and versions of Unix, that was the table that mounted all of your NFS partitions.
Right.
So you'd have half a dozen disks on other machines. FS tab was the thing that would actually control who got mounted on what mount point.
Exactly. And if you have to manually mount anything in Linux, it's a nightmare from hell.
There is one possible way of short-term mounting that works with the disks utility.
Yeah. That can be done better if you're able to boot into Linux. But from a Linux Live, you can also choose that option. The problem is Linux Live, you can't reboot and come back to where you left off.
Right.
So you have to be a little more clever about how you do it. But then you get a mount point and you click on that mount point from disks, and it will open in the File Explorer in the Linux Live if you're lucky, if it has permission.
Well, I think we've run out of time for tonight's meeting, so good luck.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we've beaten this horse more than to death. So I'm going to quit this program, and I'm going to quit my share. And I now return the meeting to its normal and upright position.
Okay, Sid, you have a question?
Yeah, well, I dropped the link in chat. I'm looking at this specific machine and I wondered anybody's thoughts on it.
Well, I didn't see an Ethernet port on it, and that's one of the things that I almost always require is at least one hard Ethernet port in case I have to do something other than Wi-Fi.
I have a USB to Ethernet adapter.
But that sometimes requires drivers and some other things. Those can work, okay? But now how many extra USB ports do you have? Now you got to start looking for a USB expansion dock of some sort that lets you plug into those kinds of things as well.
There's another little gotcha that I just recently have realized. If you're buying some new machines, especially the mini computers that are about 5 by 5 by an inch or more of height, more and more of them are coming instead of with 2 sockets for SODIMM memory, RAM, you end up with just one. So you are running in single mode instead of dual mode. That creates a little bit of a drag on timing and creates a little bit of a bottleneck. So you're not going to get as good a performance as if you had the same machine with two RAM modules instead of just one. Single mode is a lot of used equipment. It's coming with 8 gigs or 4 gigs, and in most cases, those are a single RAM module, which will run the system, but not at full capability. You have to get another RAM module on your own to put in if you don't have one, and then you have a dual channel RAM memory access. And they don't have to be the same size, but they have to be the same speed. Otherwise, whatever the slowest module is, that's the speed all memory will be accessed by.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, yeah.
I just
ahead.
looked up at my NUC 11 mini computer, which was an older one, and it does still have 2 SODIMM slots. What were you saying, Sid?
Oh,
I
almost all the older, anything about 1 year old or older is got a 2 module capability. Except for some old laptops, some of them had some built in on the motherboard and one expansion slot instead of 2. And so you have that situation. It's a bad situation now because of all the problems we're having with RAM, SSDs, spinning hard drives, and GPU because of VRAM memory. And so the end result is some of the low cost. I just saw a review of a machine cost $600. It's using the new Intel Wildcat Lake processor, which only has one primary core and 4 efficiency cores, or 4 or 5 efficiency cores. And it only has one RAM socket for the darn thing. If you order it with 16 gigs, it's soldered in. It's not expanded. And if you get the 24 or 32 gig, it is one SODIMM socket. Normally, at least the 16 gig system, normally, say about a year ago, a little over a year ago, would have cost you probably no more than $300. So now you're paying double for something that has less capability than what it might have had with 2 RAM sockets a year, more than a year ago, about 15 months ago.
So, what else did Sid have to say on this?
Okay. Well, here's the thing. I don't know if you really did a check of the specs of this machine because it's not on the face of it what you think it is. This is the new third gen Core Ultra chip.
Right.
Its NPU does 50 trillion operations per second. Its graphics is the new B390 from Intel, which is equivalent to a mid-level gaming chip
Right.
as well.
Intel and AMD both are creating new versions of old CPUs. Why? Because they work well and they have the ability to use DDR4 memory instead of having to rely upon DDR5 memory. So
Yeah,
there is a lot of push right now just to keep a lot of industries from shutting down permanently to bring back some old lesser stuff. Some of the desktop motherboards, they are now dual RAM, DDR4 now, and if DDR5 becomes affordable, you can replace it with the 4 with DDR5 memory in separate sockets.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then there is the progress that's being made in ARM.
Yeah.
And NVIDIA has just announced what they want to do with Microsoft to combine their forces for AI-driven ARM-based
That
devices.
that brings up another issue, and that some groups and users were not understanding. They saw 26H1 and thought it was for regular Windows, which would be Intel and AMD based systems. That's made for ARM processors only. So the H1 is for ARM, H2 is for Intel and AMD, but the new kid on the block is NVIDIA. And the next question is, do they fall under H1 or do they fall under H2 or is there going to be an H3?
They're H1.
They're H1? Okay.
The announcement from NVIDIA's CEO is that they're 26H1.
Okay. So then if you got any of the machines with an ARM processor running Windows, you are stuck with the H1 updates. The version number H1 will be for the future. H2 is for the older Intel AMD CPU platforms.
Okay, now back to Sid's ideas.
Well,
Yeah.
a bunch of things here. I'll do a speed round real quick. My little high-powered cube has 32 gig. The cost to upgrade it to 64 is more than I paid for the entire system
No
because
kidding.
it has two sockets. So I can pull the two 16s. The price of two 32s right now is about $600.
Wait a minute.
You
Wait.
Yeah.
Don't update now. Wait until next year. You might be paying 3 times the amount of money. Not a
No,
joke. They're
no,
really putting a bad spin right now on 2027 material.
Mm-hmm.
no. The latest forecasts I've seen is the prices are gonna dive around 2030 because all the new fab capacity will come online and supply will be above demand again.
Well, even there,
But that's 2030.
Intel
That
is starting
assumes
to
a few
try
things.
and create RAM memory also.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
China is doing the
Yeah.
same thing, but China will not drop their price. They are trying to get the same prices as the 3 big makers, Samsung,
Why?
Hynix,
Yeah.
and Micron.
I mean,
Depends.
the funny thing though is you talked about sticking with DDR4. This machine that I put the link, that's DDR5. The L in front of it means it's soldered in, so you can't change anything.
That's
But
right.
that's
Oh.
the point. The point is that how much DDR3 does somebody want? You price DDR3, it is so dirt cheap right now that you can pick up 50 sticks for like $8 each. DDR3 is basically pretty much being given away at this point if
I
you've
guess
got systems that can use it.
That
DDR3 actually does have some premium, but it's very small compared to all the others.
yeah.
Oh, it's near nothing. It's near nothing. There was an ad posted in Home Lab Sales. He had 200 sticks and he wanted $6 each for the 8 gigs. I
Uh,
mean,
I'd like to come
it's
across that one.
Yeah, I mean, those are posted regularly. But if you need, and 16s of DDR4 are pretty cheap. But if you want 32s to update a machine like this to 64, those are insane.
That's right. Yeah.
The 32 sticks are the killer point. 16 DDR4 sticks aren't that bad.
But if you don't get
But
it now, next year you're going to be paying even higher prices.
the back but back on the NVIDIA stuff and the AMD stuff.
Mhm.
NVIDIA has the CUDA stack right now, and nobody wants to go other directions. It's the most supported thing there is, which means AMD is fine if you can run something that has drivers for it. Everybody's got CUDA support. I mean, everybody. It's a real tough thing to go around. It
Yeah,
really is.
90% of the market is a NVIDIA uh, support versus
Yeah,
about 10% for Radeon. And
yeah.
actually, it's about 8% for Radeon and maybe 1 to 2% for Intel's Arc.
Yeah,
I
and it gets
mean,
worse if you're running Linux.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's what the Intel one that's called Vulkan, the drivers, I believe, with a K is. I think it's Vulkan that's
Uh,
the
Vulkan
Intel.
is Vulkan is one set of drivers. You need another set that's for the firmware.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but there isn't. They're building out. Olama has some new Vulkan support now. It's in their new stuff, but
Yeah.
it's still limited. By the way, and this is a little bit of an aside, company brought out a modified version of Twin 27B, 1-bit technology. It's 90% as accurate as the standard version, and it fits in 4 gig of memory. The issue with it is you need really a GPU to run it in. It will run on a CPU, and they have a CPU version, but it works out to about 0.15 to 0.25 tokens a second on a CPU, which is not exactly, unless you just want to run something overnight. But the plan with that is to run it directly on, somebody's got that running on the latest iPhone in memory. So you're running a 27 billion parameter on a phone fully in memory, which is impressive stuff. And the phones have the GPU to deal with that. Still not super fast. But I mean, think about that. It's a 1-bit model. I mean, zeros and ones. It's mushed down incredibly tight.
Wow.
That's cool, though. It's cool. Oh, and it's got one additional feature, and then I'll drop it. You can go to their site, and it has a model that runs entirely in browser memory. So it loads the whole model in your browser offline. However, I haven't found any browser on any machine I have that will load the entire 3.8 gig of, and not just in system memory, the browser has to support that allocation with. And
Wow.
most of them just don't support that much memory allocation in a browser window. But it's a beautiful concept.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So
When,
last thing here, guys. Should I buy this thing or not buy this thing?
if
Well,
if you got
if
the
you have the
money
money,
and you need it, go for it now.
I
Don't
don't
wait.
need it. It's a toy.
yeah.
I honestly don't need it. It's a toy.
Then
But
why bother thinking about it? Actually, I've been recently using some of my old DDR3 memory equipment more than I have in a long time, and it still works perfectly fine, especially with Linux. I mean, those things turn into a brand new machine when you run Linux versus Windows, even 10. So it is something that's forcing a lot of people to reconsider the equipment they already own and doing some modifications with it to keep on going instead of trying to pay these exorbitant prices.
Well, they are insane. I got a question for you, Ed. If you want to
Sure,
give me 2 minutes, I'll tell you the project I'm working on. But if you don't have the
sure.
time, don't worry
No,
about
no, go ahead. You have 2 minutes. No problem.
it. Okay. Here's what I built. I wanted to deal with not the greatest memory of remembering stuff. So that was the base of how can I come up with a system that will be my memory for me. So to be my memory, it has to have my email, it has to have my calendar, it has to have the documents I scan, it has to have local files. So how do you do that? So I wrote ingestion scripts that pass through an embed engine that then processes all the email with one script, all the calendar with another. I set up a project account with Google so I could run OAuth and run with their API. So it automatically goes and grabs, it puts it in something called Quadrant, QDRANT, which
Okay.
puts it in as it's a vector database. I then did a script in with Open Web UI that connects to that. So I can ask the system, when did I last see the doctor about such and such? It will go out, check the calendar data, look for anything in email that was confirming to that, and then go to documents and find the lab results as well and pull the whole thing up as a response. Um,
What happens when it treats your doctor's results as spam?
it 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 it's not the worst case is if it took it not treated the doctor stuff as spam, but treated spam as real. That would
Yeah.
be a bigger one with that. It doesn't care about whether something's spam or not. But in terms of the parsing, it's been a fascinating process to get this all working correctly on a 32 gig system without a GPU. So everything is running custom scripts because it has to be able to chunk stuff and mostly run overnight. So you set up cron tasks to run the script. So overnight it goes out. I run paperless, which is a phenomenal open source project for taking in all your documents and turning them into searchable PDFs. I run Trillium, which is a note app, which is tied in, and it has a journaling thing. So any notes I put in there is automatically added in as well.
So
Um,
how is it all backed up then in case something happens and it says I've lost their database?
uh, that that was I set up a second machine in a different floor of the house. I set up PBS, which is Proxmox backup service, and I run a full backup every night at 4 a.m. from the main machine to the other machine. And just as backup to that, it runs a 2:30 a.m. backup to an external drive on the primary machine. So
Okay.
it's doing that to both of those, and it's doing daily, weekly, monthly cycling backups, and even a yearly. But I'm not going to hit that
So
one.
when you request some of this information, does it tell you what email it pulled it out of and when that was, or do you
Yeah,
just get the summary answer?
it's set up to add citations to everything.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
citation then has the vector as part of the vector stuff. And what's fascinating with the way Quadrant works, it uses 768 data points per piece of information, and that's compressed down into about 16 bytes because it's at the bit level that it does. It then does, you can test accuracy. What it does is it looks something up directly and then going through the vectors and looks at the combined together. And it's coming in at between 0.92 and 1.0, which means it's coming up with responses in under a second that's virtually identical to what it would if it's brute force going through everything.
Okay. Does it have a name yet?
I'll probably be like the Schaumburg Library and have a contest for naming. They did that with their new returning machine with the ramp as it goes inside and it goes through and scans the stuff in. They named that one Bookosaurus with the little dinosaur.
I was thinking more like HAL, and when it's hooked up to your home automation, then when you ask it to open the pod bay doors, and it says, "I can't do that, Sid."
I'm running Home Assistant, and I can do that now. It will automatically send out to every speaker in the house any kind of announcement.
Okay.
What doesn't work and it bugs me is you can't just say the A word, please do this, or
Uh-huh.
Google or hey Google. You have to set up separate microphones to work
Yeah.
with Home Assistant.
Yeah. Home Assistant is more particular. I have not hooked up a Home Assistant microphone yet. I think that's one of the things that I was kind of surprised at. Or not, shouldn't have been, but I went through and I was finding out all of my devices that have their own IPv6 addresses. And I was kind of surprised. Some of the ones have it, some of them don't. I have two Rokus. One of them is an Ultra, one is a Premier. The Ultra has an IPv6 address, the Premier doesn't. So, both
You
of them running real
probably
similar. Yeah.
yeah. You probably saw who just bought Roku.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're
I'm
already
not
starting to
happy about
change the
that.
home screen and some other stuff. I've already revoked some of the changes to the home screen they've implemented to go it my own way. But
Yeah, I'm really grumbly about that.
I got a question.
sure.
Does anybody who hasn't spoken already have a question like Bert, Harry, and Joe?
They're all being
Just for
quiet, I think.
whatever it's worth, I've finally
Interesting
figured
to
out how to
see
get
that.
Roku on my phone, so I can watch the Roku stuff on my iPhone.
It's a kind of a small screen, though.
It's not a problem. It's portable, and I've been watching Murdoch Mysteries.
Okay. Harry, you had a comment. Did you have any questions?
So just interesting to see what people when their experience puts them up at the stratosphere, how they find creative things to use that skill and energy for. It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit lower tech for my presentation tonight, since we've already been in the stratosphere. Now we're going to get back down to the nuts and bolts. So I'm going to start sharing this. Okay. This is not secure brute expired. This is not what it is. Here, let's go back to this. Okay. This is my presentation for tonight. USB cables and communication issues. The communication issues aren't restricted to just USB. They happen to be IPv6. And I happen to merge a couple of presentations together. But everyone can see this okay?
Yep.
Good. Okay. So USB cables, they're ubiquitous. They're all over the place. We use them daily. We're charging phones, we're charging laptops, we're doing tablets, we do all kinds of things. But they all deteriorate after a period of time, and then they stop working, okay? The other issue is not all USB cables are the same. A lot of them have different functions or different capabilities because they got more wires in them. They have different interfaces on either side. Some are only capable of charging. Others have added jumpers to one end to tell the charger to use the full amount. So you wire one pin to another, and now it can charge at the full 500 milliamps that USB used to allow. Standard USBs only deliver 100 milliamps unless you have grounded a particular pin, and then it can do the 500. And then if it handshakes, it can go higher. Typical USB connections, for those uninformed, you have 4 connections plus the shield. It is a typical USB Type A connector before they added all the additional stuff for USB 3.2. USB 3.2, if you look inside the end of it, you can actually see the actual pins inside in addition to the other locations, other stuff that's in there. So you have a total of 9 that are available then. So how does that help when you're checking cables? You can look in the end of the plugs, but you can't check sockets too easily to see if you're plugging in the right one. Sometimes your sockets are color-coded. If they're white, they're USB 1. If they're black, they're USB 2. If they're a color like blue, they're usually USB 3. They can be green, they can be orange, which are even higher levels, but not always reliably identified sometimes. Having a cable that becomes intermittent is a pain in the butt, especially when you expect this thing to charge your phone overnight, and then you find out, you pick up in the morning, it stopped charging. And maybe it's just because you received a text message or something, pulled a little bit of power, vibrated a little bit, and now it stopped charging again. Very frustrating. And especially when it's not just you that have the charging issue, but your significant other complains about it, like, this cable doesn't work anymore. So I happen to look around for testers for various cables and such, and I contemplated getting out my digital voltmeter and checking out the connections, and it doesn't really go through the full extent of what you need to do. I found this little thing on Amazon. It cost me a whole $15, and it has a battery, a coin battery that's on it, but it can also plug into a USB-C connection for power, and it tells you what's wired to what. So this is the one with the case, the nice case around it. Of course, I was too cheap to spend the $18.99 because it wasn't on sale, and I didn't get it fast enough. So I went with the original. And it's kind of nice. It looks like a circuit board with standoffs and a piece of plexi over it, so you keep yourself from touching things you're not supposed to. But the back also shows you some other information on it, like what pins go where, in terms of being able to figure out, okay, that's a USB-C connection. What goes where and what does it do? So this thing has a fair amount of capabilities. It has 2 USB Type A connectors. One's a 3.0, one's a 2.0, and a USB-C on the left. On the right, there's a USB Type B, a Type C. There's a Micro B, Mini B, a Lightning, and a Micro B 2.0 on the bottom. So, and then on the top, there is a USB-C connection for power. And then there's this little tiny power switch on the upper left-hand corner that basically allows you to either power from the USB-C connection, power to, or powers from the battery. And once you power it on, it checks the cable that's plugged in from one side to the other. You don't check a cable that's plugged into a piece of equipment. You're checking the cable all by itself. So now you can have both ends plugged in somewheres, okay? And now you can check to see if it's intermittent. If you need to check a USB to USB cable with just the Type A and a Type A socket, then you would put another cable in line with it, and that's how it can be checked, like to a USB-C, that you know it's a known good. But it tells you which connections are being made, and also can tell you what its capabilities are. If it's just a charging cable, if it is a data cable, if it's a data cable with higher speeds. Because the USB charge data cable is only good to 400 meg. USB Type 1 was only 12. And if it's a Type 3, well, then there's more than one data highway that it can send the information. So this helps test all of your questionable cables, and then you can bump the cable, test it, see if it wiggles, and any of the things change the illumination. Well, you know you definitely got a bad cable, and you've isolated the cable. So here's a couple of them. Can you tell the difference between these two pictures? Well, one of them has a bright LED here, and this one has two dim ones. So that tells me those connections, and they happen to be the data connections, were the ones that were intermittent. The power ones were fine. So that probably could still be used as a charging cable, but I wouldn't trust it for much else. There's another one that's not shown on here on these actual pictures on the bottom that tells you whether the ground connection goes through the shield. So here's the type of display, and you can just take either the left or the right-hand display. It makes no difference. Because it shows you basically the same information on either one side or the other. But a charging cable only has the 4 connections. If it has data transmission, it's got the D plus and the D minus. And if it has high-speed data, then it has a transmit pair and a receive pair, and it's got a clock. So it's got other. So when I plug in one of the cables that I use to have an external SSD drive that's capable, and I want to plug it in from a USB-A, it lights up all those lights. That's one that's a USB-C that has almost everything plugged in. So if you do have it both charging in a data cable and the data connection is intermittent, it could also affect your charging if it's trying to handshake the charge. USB-C allows you to, USB chargers do have capabilities of increasing the amount of power delivered to the load if it handshakes in the proper way. And there's a particular type of handshake that can be utilized to tell the charger to go to 12 volts, well, it starts at 5, goes to 9, goes to 12, and it can go 18 or even 27. And there's even ones that'll go higher than that for like power packs for computers. So this is what the USB-C 3.2 to USB-C, and that's with all the lights turned on. Basically, it says I got all of those capable highways to be able to send the information back and forth. Also, I found some other things that were interesting at the same time that I ordered, because I was contemplating fixing some USB-C equipment. I found these breakout boards that have a USB-C socket and a plug on either end, and then have rows of bird pins. And on the back is a wire that goes between the two that's on the trace. So if you wanted to make your own cable or modify a cable, you could do it easily enough by making your own jumpers across and then breaking the wire so it's not connected through. But this is a good place to, this is in case you want to use the multimeter approach to diagnosing cables. What if you want to check cables with E-markers? E-markers are a new type of technology in some of the USB cables that allows the cable to tell the connected equipment what it's capable of doing. So there is active electronics inside of your cable. One of these devices that's out there can check this and tell you what it's good for, and also what speeds it can try and reach. So I don't have one of these things yet. I didn't quite see the need for this, but if you are into that kind of thing, diagnosing cables, this is one of those things you might want to get. What if you have to check your USB charger? Well, I found another device that was out there, and I said, oh, this is exactly what I'd like to see. I want to see how much power my charger is actually delivering to this thing that I'm trying to charge. Well, this will do it for you. This will actually show you what voltage, what current, how much watts. It's got a fair amount of capability inside this little tiny board, and it is not large at all. It is small. This thing, I can't see it. It's like, and if I take it out of the thing, it's not going to light up right now. because it's not plugged in, but it takes power from the device under test. And when it has the device, then, like I said, it uses power to be able to display this. And the display will actually flip depending on the orientation. So if you have it one way and you tip it the other, it'll go upside down for you. So some of these you'll see the logo upside down, but it'll actually have the normal display. Then by clicking the top wheel, it'll actually show you some of the statistics, how long it's been charging, how much it's used. This thing will also connect to your computer and through an app, and you can save all of the information to the app and onto your hard drive, and like the history of this thing as it charged, so you could watch it and analyze it further. Okay, so this is the link to that particular tester as well, in case you're interested in it. It can test up to 28-volt supplies. It can also trigger it can test your charger to make sure it's capable of triggering by manually triggering it, but you're not supposed to have devices connected to it when you do this. Nice little 2-inch screen, and it's really a great way of doing this, trying to keep track of this thing. Very clear display. Other things I've come across. IPv6 is being used pretty much on a lot of sites. The big ones are Google and Facebook. There are ones that don't use IPv6, and they're conspicuous by their absence. If you try and find the IPv6 for Comcast.com, Comcast.net, ATT.net, SBCglobal.net, you guess what you find? You don't find any IPv6 addresses for them. They will do IPv4. They will supply you IPv6 DNS servers, but they don't actually have IPv6 actual addresses. So if you check your IPv6 addresses used on your particular machines, you will find that you probably have several different kinds of addresses. One of them begins with a 2XX to 3FFF address. That is a publicly routable, it's a global IP unicast address is what it really is. That means that is a unique entity that I can find your machine, because it's a combination of a 64-bit prefix and or actually more, it could be even more than that, because it adds your MAC address into the calculation for something that basically addresses 2 to the 35th power. So that you're not going to run out, and you can uniquely identify every machine that you own, plus everything that your family owns, and half of the companies, or all of the companies in the world can name. This was brought to light by something Tim pointed out to me. IPv6 is watching you. So even if you're using a VPN, if you got IPv6 and your VPN doesn't capture your IPv6 information and basically hide it from the world, basically you're telling the other end where you're searching where you are. And you can use the location can be actually determined actually to where you are actually communicating from. Now, IPv6 versus IPv4. IPv4 been around for a long time. This is, like a little bit of a learner here. So you can, IPv4 only had a combination of about 4 billion addresses tops. And then it ran out of steam. There was no more addresses to be used. You either had to use private nets and route through a common net. But there are 4 billion addresses that were available that directly connect to the internet. Then they're broken into classes. Class A, B, C are the primary 3. Most of us are familiar with the Class C address, the non-routable one that our routers use, the 192.168.x.x. That's one that almost all of your routers and devices use. I've seen occasionally the 172.16 used. If you have an UMA device and you plug your connector into the back of the UMA device, That's typically the addressing range that they will deliver to you, is a Class B address. 10.00 is something that is usually used inside of major corporations. So if you are sitting there at a Motorola or an AT&T and you're inside their firewall, you have a 10 dot address that you're currently utilizing. IPv6 addresses are 8 groups of 16-bit values that are expressed usually in hexadecimal. That's 128 bits of address to uniquely identify a device. And there's categories. The 2000:/3 says the first 3 bits, okay, have to be 2 through 3, basically, and that's the address range that would be incorporated in that. That is all of the global unicast addresses. So that is what's available to identify every machine on the internet, and that represents 4.2 exponent 37. So a lot of numbers, a lot of zeros there, folks. If you see addresses beginning with FC00, FE00, those are local link addresses. And then the equivalent of the loopback address is : :1. That one you can always ping, and that one tells you that's your loopback connector. IPv6 notation, and here's how the /3 is interpreted. It says the first hex digit is 2, and those are the values it can be. So that's the 2 ranges that are extended by that notation. Sometimes you'll see a %. The % usually refers to the interface that you have associated with it if you're looking at an IP config. Okay. Does IPv6 need DHCP? Is a good question. Not necessarily. And a host router, as long as it can do DHCP upstream and get an IPv6 address, it doesn't have to have a DHCP pool for IPv6 for the rest of the devices in your house. All it has to do is broadcast the prefix and tell all of the devices that understand how to do this with IPv6 to add their MAC address, which is already a unique identifier on every Ethernet device, and that makes a uniquely routable address. There is no ARP command for IPv6 like IPv4 uses, because with IPv4, if you have a DHCP address and you've used it and you don't use it for 30 seconds, typically a machine will have to ARP his address to see, does anybody else have my address? No. Can I still use this address? Yes. Okay, I can still communicate on it. So if you're constantly doing communication within 30 seconds, you don't have to refresh your address. But if it's more than 30 seconds, you will see traffic. If you've ever used something like Wireshark to analyze wired traffic, and you see these ARPs going out, like, what is it doing? He's asking about his own address. Well, just making sure that he's who he thought he is. Also, you will see requests that said, where's the router? Where's the host router? I forgot where he was. Where's 192.168.1.1? What's his MAC address? Because it's been more than 30 seconds since I talked to him last. So he has to re-ask for, are you out there? And then the host router responds and said, yeah, I'm still here. I've been here all the time. But that's one of the nuances of IPv4 that required this. IPv6, a lot of that goes away. IPv6, your temporary address is usually good for 24 hours. So there's not all this chatter that has to go back and forth. If you haven't used it in this period of time, it can go stale. And so if you actually look at your current IPv6 addresses that your computer knows about, you'll see some of them said they're active, some of them have gone stale. So it's either reachable or stale. So if you want to understand, if you used ipconfig in a command line /all and maybe used ARP to look at all the MAC addresses that come back, then you should probably know the NetSH interface IPv6 show neighbors. If you know the show neighbors command, then you can see everything that's nearby. Well, that's everybody that you've talked to that's nearby. That's not necessarily everyone who's on your network. So how do you find all the other IPv6 devices that are on your network now? um, and I talked about that YouTube display thing. He was suggesting using an IPv4 only router to limit your visibility on the internet. But there's still a bunch of IPv6 addresses that some of your devices are still using. I was on my router with the connectivity screen and going to the individual devices, clicking on them and saying, show detail, show detail, show detail. And some of them had IPv6 addresses, some of them didn't. I thought, okay, there's got to be a tool out there. Well, there is. There's a LAN IP scanner.html at NERSOFT. That you download that program and it will show you all of your IPv6 devices that are currently active. And it's a nice way of archiving who's available and who's not available. So I fired up, this is their screen. I don't have my screen in the presentation, but I was kind of surprised by some of the things that I did find that were out there. Okay. Found some devices that had IPv6 addresses, and some of them had other surprises. My Roku Ultra had a global IPv6 address. The Roku Premier did not, only had IPv4. If they have an IPv6, they also have the IPv4 address, but it just, when you see the IPv6 address, they know they can use it. LG TV and Home Assistant both had IPv6 addresses as expected. Cell phones, the video picture frame, Google Home, all had global IPv6 addresses. And the problem with the global IPv6 addresses and that one YouTube presentation link that I had previously is that if they can track the global IP address, to your house, they're going to keep track of it. They're going to save that information. So if it's available, they will use it. If you're routing through an IPv4 gateway and it's hiding your IPv6 for you, either through your VPN or through another transition, then it's not immediately accessible. You can use this thing called DNS Checker IPv6 Whois Lookup. It will actually take an IPv6 that you paste in, and it'll try and show the address it thinks it's at. I was kind of surprised. Some of these addresses that came up after I typed it into this thing came right up to my home address. Google Maps put the pin right on my house. Like, okay, then you do know this address. Even when I tried to use this same site through my cell phone, not connected through my LAN, I thought maybe it was able to see my LAN address, but I was able to type in an address associated with my cell phone, associated with my computer on the cell phone. So it was interrogating. It says, it's not your address. You still want to check it? Sure. And it showed the same address. Sometimes it's not as accurate. Other times it's right on the money. There was another thing that I came across also that was showing me a little bit more information about what your browser may leak about your private information. IPleak.net is an interesting site to go to. Tells me if you type it in and you run it, it'll show you what your computer is sharing with the other end, both in terms of all the resolution, all the addresses, all your DNS servers that you're accessing. All those things are going to come up on that screen. And then you can test a VPN to see if anything is leaking as well. So if you're using a VPN, either the Firefox browser or your other choice of VPN, this is one way to see if it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. And that is my presentation. So let me go ahead and send this out. That way everyone can download a copy of this. The USB tester, highly recommended. Both of the ones for the cable and the one for the power supply. If you have to do anything where you have to determine how much power is coming out of a USB charger into a device under test, or you want to see how long is it taking to charge up that power bank and how much is it actually pulling, this is a great thing to use. So, questions? Yes, Sid. Need to unmute, Sid.
Okay, that way. All right. Slurpee was making lots of noises, so I had to mute because I figured everybody didn't need to listen to a German Shepherd murmuring a lot. He starts snoring and murmuring these days. He's gotten older, and so it's. I posted a couple links in chat of a couple devices. I was actually it's as my old friend Ben Weaver would have said, it's apropos because I was just looking into this last week because I have so many cables sitting around that don't seem to be necessarily doing what they should be doing. That the more expensive one I was when I was looking around was highly recommended. Whether it's that good or not, I'm wonder your thoughts, but it got really high recommendations.
Well, that Tredix one is the one that I had in my presentation at $45, but that
Yeah.
is interrogating the e-marker reading. So that's going beyond what you normally would need. But if you really have a bunch of lightning cables and such, and you want to use them to analyze to see if they're actually functioning correctly, that's supposed to be a very good unit. There's a lot of capabilities in the actual tester that I had. The one from how's that pronounced? FNIRSI. Okay. I don't know if there's an English
Sounds like
pronunciation
a
for that or not.
generic drug.
Yes, it does look like a generic drug. I've seen a lot of their equipment offered in various places, either on Facebook or off a Temu or something like that, like little small oscilloscopes, those kinds of tools, digital VTVM testers. They have a lot of equipment that's available. This happened to be one. It was priced kind of low, so I thought, well, I'll try it, see if it works what I want it to do. And it, like I said, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. And it's kind of interesting. I was surprised when I started playing with the thumb wheel on this thing to see the other screens that are available. I mean, this thing is probably got an ARM processor inside of it, so it's probably capable of doing a lot more than I've even scratched the surface with. It also allows you to connect in with an app to your computer and let your computer do the logging of the information as well. I'm not sure if it has Bluetooth as well. It might even have that. I haven't scratched the surface on that to see whether it has that as well. But there was the only downside is all the manuals for it are online. So you don't get a manual with it. The other one, the board, I did get a little book, a little tiny book in 12 languages, yes.
There you go.
But it's also laid out very cleanly. And I could tell when some of these adapters that I use that have like a male, female to do right angles for USB connections, which ones had more than 4 connections going through it to find out whether they could do better than USB 2, or if they had, I mean, the ultimate is going to be one of the USB 3 cable extension cords that you can have that may have all 12 wires wired up through it. And when you actually get to the actual USB-C connection, there's actually 20 connections inside of it. But some of them are redundant, and I'm not sure if the redundancy helps in some cases. Some of the cables I've had in the past, when they started to go intermittent, if I flipped the USB-C around to the other side, they were working for a while until they eventually broke as well. But they all fail after a fashion. Yes, go ahead, Sid.
Is it true that chips in some of those cables are more powerful than some of the original the original PCs?
I don't know if they're actually they're more powerful. They are usually faster. Because remember, the original IBM PC was 4.77 megahertz. Now you will find a 8-bit micro that's sitting at several hundred megahertz. So yes, it will actually operate faster. Is it more capable? Well, it may not have the same amount of memory. I mean, the original PC had 64K, and then 768K was probably the top you could ever get out of it. Is it faster than the 286 with 16 meg? Maybe, but I kind of doubt it because it's not the same power. It's not, it's sipping the power. It's sort of like Raspberry Pi Zero is a very powerful machine in its own right, but based on the amount of power it can, I'm not going to have it decoding video. Okay, I'm not going to sit there and use it for digitizing something. But it will drive video.
Yeah. I just thought it was I thought I saw that it was more powerful than the Apollo processors.
The Apollo processors were basically calculators. If you even look at, I mean, some of the satellites that were used, what was it? The RCA 1802 was a silicon on sapphire processor. Somewheres around here, I have a sample of one on a poster board that it was pushing silicon on sapphire from HP. And that was one of the processors that was used on one of the missions. The reason they were using some of those was because they were radiation resistant. Other chips, if you just took a garden variety Intel processor and put it into space, it only lasts for a short period of time before eventually it has addressing errors or memory errors because of radiation effects. So certain chips are resistant, other chips are not. But they used to have a lot less dense chips. Like the things that are sitting out there on Pioneer 1 and 2 are hard-coded, we're talking the transmission rate you're talking from those particular satellites are in the hundreds of bits per second, not megabits. So they're not sending a lot of stuff back at this range, but again, they are now a full light day away. So any transmission from them takes 24 hours to arrive at the speed of light. Yes. I'm impressed. Yes. And something that was made back then and launched in the early 70s and is still talking. That's amazing too.
That's cool. So the last link I put in chat I bought last week is sort of the other side of this.
Oh, that's a charger block and a half.
Yeah.
It is a 380 watt USB-C charger block. So this charges multiple devices at different power levels. The question is, how much power does it use dynamically when it's plugged in? That's an interesting thought. Is this a very efficient charger? So if somebody's not using power in a particular area, it's not pulling it out of the wall?
It's a GAN Gen 3 chip.
I am not familiar with that specific chip. I'm thinking it probably is. Probably has, let's see. See more product details. Okay, we're looking here. All right. It does not say anything. Let's see. Look at the reviews. In multiple charges, fast charging. Let's see if does it come with a power cable? Of course, it comes with a power cable.
And it comes with 4 USB cables.
Yeah. Gallium nitride. Okay, so it should be efficient in terms of power conversion. So it shouldn't be dissipating a lot of power itself. But now you got a bunch of USB cables that come out of it, snaking to everything within 3 feet of the charger. This doesn't work so well when you're in another room.
That is true. It has two supposed 100-watt ports.
Well, that means it could run 2 laptops if they are 100-watt only. The problem I've seen with some of the laptops is, well, they can, on occasion, ask for more than that 100 if they really wanted to, if depending on what you're running on it. If you had that HP one that you specified with the Intel processor and the NPU, I suspect that its power pack was something on the other side of a 65-watt USB. The only thing I wonder about those USB connections is also when they're running at 100+ watts, and I know they're using multiple wires to do it, but how close are they to running the maximum power through the actual diameter wire that goes into that little tiny USB connector? I mean, that sucker is rather small, okay? I mean, there's 20 connections in there. What's the diameter of the copper and how much amperage can go through it? Granted, it does increase the voltage, which means less amperage is needed. That's the one saving grace on some of the higher power handshakes. Because again, they handshake, what was this voltage steps? If I look that up, maybe it'll tell me. Yes. Charger. Okay, so the typical ones for USB power delivery 3.0 goes from 9, 12, 15, or 20 volts after handshaking, starting at 5. I'm trying to think. There are some that can use programmable ones. I'm wondering what they have for the 100-watt. See, the 100-watt would be about 20 volts, and it would need 5 amps, and it's got 2 wires to deliver it on. So that's only 2.5 amps per connector. That's probably not too bad. It's when you start getting higher amperage to try and deliver the same kind of information. It's at one point in time does corrosion start to generate heat on the connector, and that usually causes a failure. That may cause the cable itself to fail inside. Or that little chip that's inside of there that's doing the handshake decides it can't handle the power dissipation. I have noticed that certain things change if ambient temperatures increase. I happened to notice on my Prius the other day when I decided to turn off the air conditioning. It was a little on the warm side. It was at night, but it was still in the 80s. And I happened to notice that the engine did not want to shut down when I came up to a stop. And I happened to research this a little farther and discovered that it may not turn off the engine if it thinks the battery needs additional help, or the battery isn't cool enough. It may do some other things. It has an option to not shut the engine down. And then I went and did some more thought about it. I should have had the air conditioning running because the cabin air is used to cool the battery pack in a Prius. So if I had had the air conditioning on, it may have turned off the engine more quicker when I came to a stop. But yeah, that's good. Interesting things that you discover when you go through trying to figure out and analyze, well, how did they do that? How did they figure this out? It's just amazing the fact that I'm still running a 2010 Prius that I've had for the last 15 years, and it's still on its original battery pack. It's got a different inverter in there because that thing failed a couple years ago, but it was covered under a Toyota warranty from a class action. So they said, yep, you're good until 2030. But you got a newer one now, right, Bob?
Yeah, 2020
Yes.
plug-in.
Yes. Now that
Yeah.
has a lithium battery pack, so that might not have the same kind of restrictions. Might be more critical on the temperature though, because lithiums don't like to run warm at all.
I've never run into ambient temperature issues with not being able to run on the plug-in power.
Okay.
And we've
Yeah.
had 100 plus degree days lately.
Yeah. But you probably had the air conditioning running anyway.
Not entirely, only on the hottest days.
Okay.
But that's when you would see the effect.
Yes. Well, again, like I said, the cabin air is used to cool the battery, at least in my version. I suspect they have a similar setup. They figured if the human is uncomfortable and wants to be cool, so should the battery pack.
Yeah, I think they do that. And if you're doing excessive electrical draw, this also happens in winter in cold weather, it will not be able to run on EV power at all.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
true of all the hybrids.
Interesting. Any other questions? Harry, you have a question?
No, just
No.
all fascinating.
Yes. Like I said, these things actually are quite nice to be able to figure out the ease in which you want to find and figure out a cable that's not working so well, and especially when your cables look like this and they're wound up in a knot because, I don't want to use them again, so I'm going to leave them wound up in a knot, and then maybe they won't bother me again. But I've also checked out some of these other brand X cables that I've gotten from places like our local Menards, where you have one USB-A connector and you have 3 USB-C connectors. Okay, are all these the same? No, they're not the same. One of the cables might be capable of doing data. The other 2 are only charge cables. So they don't have all the wires wired up through it. Like, oh, would have been nice for them to tell me about this when I bought this thing. But it's pretty quick and easy to be able to do a test. You basically are plugging your USB-C into one side and your USB-A into the other side, and then you can flip a switch, and let's see if it'll focus on me. I'll put it in front of my face. Yes, it's not going to let me focus on it. But you can see the lights lit up that basically tell me, okay, this one is not too, but as I wiggle it, I can see something that's not making good contact, especially it's the ground. The ground stops making a good contact. So I thought, okay, that's the wire inside of the connector. And most USB-C plug connectors, you cannot take apart. I think sometimes I've seen the shield will slide up off of the unit and you can pull it apart. Other ones, not as easily found. I also had another device that had failed, which was a VGA USB connected adapter. And I found some other components that would facilitate the repair of those USB connectors, because sometimes the USB connector breaks off. Well, how many wires are in it? And I'm looking at this connector and says, well, it looks like a USB-C connector because it has the 4 plus the 5. But then when I looked at the other end of what it goes into, only 4 wires are being used. So therefore, it is a USB 2.0 type of cable. Even the USB-C is a ubiquitous type of connector, but not all USB-C connectors support USB 3. They support USB 2 in some cases. So I have my Motorola phone. The connection on the bottom of my Stylus 2023 is a USB 2 in a USB-C form factor. So it limits the amount of data that can go back and forth.
Yeah. Speaking of phones, I have had to upgrade.
Oh,
Xfinity decided their app would no longer run on Android below 10. I don't think that's a Comcast decision. I think that's a Google decision about getting rid of older phones that run versions of Android where you can still sideload.
well, you are using Xfinity Mobile then on your phone?
No, I am using US Mobile as my carrier,
Okay.
and the problem is with the phone itself. It's a Moto G4 2020 or 2021, and it can only go up to Android 7.
Yep.
And so that app and the Yahoo Mail app decided, nah, you can't run us anymore.
Yeah, I've seen some of that happening. It gradually happens in other places as well. I found that um, other things have also decided to cause grief by saying, "I'm not going to run on your machines anymore." Fortunately, it's somewhat seldom, but the Xfinity app is actually quite useless as it currently states.
No,
Because
the Xfinity app is necessary if you want to do anything with your network
if you want, well, if you
because
want to,
they have removed every other access to some of the settings.
if you have their router cable modem, yes,
Yeah, which I
yeah,
do and a lot of
yeah.
other people do. But
I,
anyway, in my case, this is what finally forced the upgrade. And so
I,
I'm upgrading to a 2024 Moto G stylus, which is a 5G capable, and it's still going to be on US Mobile, still on my plain old network, but it should be able to run Android 16 eventually.
I have been able to make some of the changes to our Xfinity gear for a business via a web browser, and that's the only way you can make some of the changes to the wireless settings. So you're doing it through the Xfinity web browser app, not necessarily an Xfinity app. So I don't use an Xfinity app to manage the this other site because I already have Xfinity at home, and the app isn't smart enough to know, are you doing home or are you doing work?
Yeah, well, that's Xfinity Business, but
Yes.
Xfinity Home users do not have any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think,
Through through the browser, you can do nothing.
I think it'll let me restart the or
Yeah,
restart the cable modem is about the only thing, but that's the only thing that I
yeah.
usually have to do anymore
Well,
to
I can
do
do that.
anything.
I can do that through my TV.
But I do but I keep the router on my side of the fence, so they don't have any access to the router. But I've had some issues with the router too. When
If you
I,
have
yeah,
yeah, if you have your own router, you have more control. But I if you have your own router, you also may not have all of their services and features.
I have streaming. I have
Yeah.
X1. I have, yeah. So I mean, yeah, I I don't know what they think I'm missing. If they think that the thing that I dislike about the way Xfinity configures the home routers and their configuration for Wi-Fi is they seem to think that, oh, I must have the fastest possible wireless experience for limited devices. So when they do the 5 gigahertz spectrum, they configure their access point to be 160 megahertz wide. So they're using up as much of the band as they can possibly use because I want to be able to do the 2 gigabit download. And with Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6, I want to be able to use all of that bandwidth. When in actuality, you probably be better off if you have multiple access points with 40 megahertz bandwidth. 40 megahertz bandwidth is easily capable of doing 300 megabit up and down. Not a problem with that on 40 megahertz and 802.11n. I mean, that will work. AG will work as well. You don't have to use 160. You could use 80 megabits and have two bands of for access on one side of the house or the other side. And if you have a lot of devices like IoT devices, most of them are using 2.4 anyway.
Yeah.
Excuse me. All this smoke is going to make me sneeze.
Plus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the smoke is coming inside. Yes. But
Yeah, my modem I upgraded so I can do 6 gigahertz.
okay. How many devices connect in the six though?
Well, I'm very lean on devices. I don't do
Okay.
IoT or anything.
Okay. So you
So
have only your phone is the only thing that's probably connecting, and maybe
no, no,
if
no,
you
no.
upgraded your wireless adapter,
Computers.
the computers all have Wi-Fi
They
6.
are all Wi-Fi 6, either through USB dongles or through native capability. In the case of
Okay.
my Framework 13 laptop, which is new.
Yeah. Well, you also have an issue with more people being in your generic neighborhood.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people. It's a crowded environment. You can get interference issues, far less of an issue on 6 gigahertz.
Yeah. No Wi-Fi 7 stuff yet?
No, I'm not ready to move up to that. And my computers are not.
The one thing I would be hesitant to moving to all of that is um, there is still an issue with a number of the routers that support Wi-Fi 6 and 7 that are made internationally. And there's a possibility that they may contain compromised code, is the issue that the government wants to restrict the sale of some of these routers. So you may want to get a TP link and maybe a mesh, and you're doing fine with it. But what happens if the government says, oh, I'm sorry, TP link is now on our blacklist. You can't get any more updates for it. Okay, because we're afraid that they're going to download something in it that may compromise the system. Or you have other device. One of the things that I found that was interesting when I did my IP scan was something I had not seen on any of the devices that I have owned and used in my house. My the MyQ garage door camera has changed its MAC address to use a randomized MAC address. Which I thought, whoa, you are security conscious here. You have changed your address. So no, I didn't even know who it was. I'm thinking, what address is this beginning with a 5.6? There is no such MAC address used with a 5.6. Who's that device code? And then I looked in my history of DHCP and I found an older address, and it was the same machine name, the same unique name, and it was from my MyQ camera capable. So they have started to randomize their MAC address to change their location in IPv4. With IPv6, it did have an IPv6 address, however. So, and MyQ does not have any access to any of the firmware that's available in it. They don't allow you to connect. They're very restrictive as to who they will allow to work with. It used to be you could say you could use your friendly Google person and have it open the garage door for you. But they've discontinued all of that interface. They don't interface to any of the home assistants anymore. They will allow an Amazon driver to drive up and drop off your package inside your garage. However, MyQ and Amazon are both using IPv6, and they can actually look at what you're doing with your IPv6. So if you're ordering something and having it delivered and you did it on your laptop with IPv6, I'm sure there's probably a little tag in a database somewheres, soon to be taken over by, what's the name of that company that wants to have all of our information? Palantir? I think that's the name of it.
Palantir.
Yes.
Palantir.
Yeah, the big round thing that, that the hobbits aren't supposed to look
Lord
into.
of the Rings. Yeah. Sauron's device.
Yeah, Soren's device.
The
That's
yellow
not
eye.
But I'm sure they're trying to capture all your IPv6 information now. And
If I look into the Palantir and I see Elon Musk's face staring back at me, then I'll know I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Or you just see any of the members of the current administration. That's enough right there.
Yeah, that'd be enough to put me off of whatever I was using.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, it could be a future administration too.
Yeah, it could be. It definitely could be. Yes. I see you put some other things. Yeah, gallium nitride is definitely a semiconductor. A little bit different than using silicon. It's much higher band gap voltage, so it should have a higher frequency capable. Let's see, what was the other thing? Gen 1 versus Gen 2. Oh, you've got some other stuff in here.
This is versus Gen 3, because I mentioned this was Gen 3.
Yeah. Okay, 30 watts, 140 watts. Yes, okay. All right. Oh, they want to use it in data centers. Wonderful. Remember that electrical power that you were going to use for your air conditioning? It's now going to a data center for you.
The latest scheme is they're going to decentralize some of their edge processing and put it in people's backyards. Right now they're saying they'll do it. Right now they're saying they'll do it without compensation, but eventually I think you'll get some extra tokens with their AI.
Or remember that laptop you were looking at, Sid? They're going to download some of their work to you.
Well, no, there's a little device they put in your backyard, and it kind of hums a little, and it gets hot.
It's called a cell tower. Yeah.
No, it's just a little. It's just a little box, no bigger than a tower PC.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bigger, but it's not as big as an air conditioning unit.
Yeah.
And
it requires water for cooling. Yes.
No, it's air cooled.
It's air cooled. Okay.
And what is that supposed to do?
In large networks, there is a concept of edge processing. You pre-process raw data, at the edge of the network instead of sending it to the hub at the center. And this takes load. This takes loads off of the big data centers and pushes them out to these little units that can be in your home. That's the same principle as having breadbox units on telephone poles for either conventional cable and Fios or for the new direct wireless to the home.
And they have a new name for this. Is it called Gemini Home?
The breadbox things that give you internet are called fixed wireless access 5G.
Okay.
FWA.
FWA.
Fixed wireless access. And you can look down any block in your neighborhood if it's in your neighborhood, and you can see these little bread boxes on the utility poles. And occasionally a bigger box, which is an edge processing box. And it's also a routing box.
From what you know, when you were speculating a moment ago, will the residential owner have some advantage as a result of this being in there?
Right now, they have not said there would be, but I suspect they will have a sweetening deal where if you allow this, you get a break on that. Probably it's your use of their AI.
Yeah, but if it's on the pole, technically it's not in your yard. It's in.
No, these edge processors for the AI data centers are heavy enough they have to be on the ground.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I have a sense that New York will be not among the leaders. The governor just sent an executive order 2 or 3 days ago to slow down that whole process in New York.
Just slowing that down means the big data centers are going to be fewer and far between, but they're actually probably saving the AI companies from what is going to happen when and if the AI bubble bursts and it's no longer as popular with big business.
Yep.
Businesses are finding out that a lot of the AI workers that they're getting, a lot of the vibe working, is not working out for them. And they're not actually getting the results they want. And they're having to hire back older engineers. to fix the problems and to look over the code. They're having to
Where have
hire
I
back people
seen that before?
to audit the
Yes.
code.
Also, a cost factor that they're getting surprised with all the AI usage that they were forcing their employees to use. Now they're cutting dramatically back on that and either using local LLMs or something else to reduce dependency on the AI and have to hire back a lot of people they let go if they can get them back.
Yeah, there's also something that will happen. Smaller, more efficient, locally hosted, self-hosted AI, like Sid is experimenting with. These are getting better by leaps and bounds. And with the new NVIDIA and Microsoft AI processors, it's going to take off. And it's going to take a lot away from these AI data centers. It'll take some of the burden off of them. And a lot of businesses are probably going to host their own. And they may host several of them.
Well, it'll be interesting. Maybe you live in interesting times.
Yeah. Again, it's all about edge processing or pre-processing. And also something called slicing of network resources, dividing up a resource so that it is used on a sort of a timeshare basis.
And being able to replicate in various places so you have redundancy in case of failure.
Right. That's another thing that edge processing helps with, though it doesn't completely give you the answer.
Yeah.
You'd have to totally decentralize and go into a federated group of servers that are elsewhere.
That's the next step is to push the processing across the entire node base so that it is a gestalt response.
If you want an example of that, Mastodon Social and ActivityPub, which it's based on, those are federated.
Okay. Interesting.
I know this because one of my open source groups have somebody who's really active on Mastodon. In fact, several people.
Interesting. Okay.
And Mastodon, of course, is one of these alternatives like Blue Sky that went into greater popularity when X became what it is now.
Understood. Yeah, I know. X has gone over and joined the other side.
Well, they've been kind of grokked out. They've been kind of grokked out.
Yeah. Any other questions that we have tonight? Okay, I see that we've reached our bewitching hour. So, okay, Tim, I guess I'll have you go ahead and finish your recording. I will stop. Tim, you have announcements?
Next Tuesday is Windows Office and AI. A week from that Tuesday is the Linux SIG meeting.
Anything else you want to share, Bert?
Oh, just it was a terrific meeting tonight. Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. No problem. Thank you very much for joining.
All right. Thanks.